Welcome to Turning Hard Times to Good Times. I am your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm speaking to you from New York City on this, the 23rd day of July 2019. I would like to encourage you to consider subscribing to Chen Lin's newsletter, What is Chen Buying, What is Chen Selling? You can do so by going to chenpicks.com. Chenpicks.com. Chen has done remarkably well for his investors and for his own account. He has turned some $5,400 over 10 years into $2.5 million in one account that I'm aware of. That account was an IRA account in which no money went in, no money came out over that 10-year period of time. He is a person I've learned to know over the years and one I have a great deal of respect for. He works extremely hard, and he comes up with novel ideas, novel investing ideas, and has done very well in various, primarily in biotech as well as energy, and to a certain extent also in gold shares, done also very well. I want to thank each of you for listening to the show and making it one of the more popular Voice America Business channel shows. I do want to also remind you that I am also the author of a newsletter called Jay Taylor's Gold, Energy, and Tech Stocks. You can subscribe to that by going to miningstocks.com. We do want to thank our sponsors for making the show economically viable. Our sponsors this week, Klondike Gold, Noble Resources, Radisson Mining Resources, and Great Bear Resources. I've titled today's show, The Deep State, Who Really Runs America? Craig Huey will visit for the first time. Michael Oliver will be with me after the first commercial break. I want to pick his brain in terms of the markets and timing and, is gold really on a new bull market or not? Then in the second half of today's show, as I mentioned, Craig Huey will be with me for the first time. He'll be here to talk about his new book called The Deep State, 15 Surprising Dangers You Should Know. So what is the definition of a deep state? And if it actually exists in the United States, who are the players? What evidence is there that a deep state actually exists in America, giving the American people the false hope that they run their government rather than somebody behind the curtain? How extensive is the deep state, if in fact it exists? Is it a global entity, or is it just national? So those are some of the questions that I want to ask Craig Huey. If he can give us some examples of how the elite actors behind the curtain have impacted policy and changed our lives. Those are some of the things that I want to try to find out from Craig Huey, and which I think the answers are in The Deep State, 15 Surprising Dangers You Should Know. With the gold and silver market starting to poke the deep state in the eyes, I want to take the time today to do what I can do to help this show live up to its name, turning hard times into good times, even in a time when the future, at least in terms of material well-being and even liberties, are significantly diminished. Of course, I agree with Ron Paul, who said, if we have liberty, prosperity will quite naturally follow. But take away our liberty, which of course means freedom to serve each other through a free market system, and our economic well-being will suffer as well. It is true that with the emergence of the American empire starting after World War I and the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank and the income tax systems, Americans have actually enjoyed a dramatically greater standard of living despite declining liberties. But as America grew into an empire, it did it through dishonest means of monetary printing and confiscation of wealth by government against its citizens. As victors in 2 world wars, a growing elite in America has emerged that President Eisenhower warned us against, namely the military-industrial complex. To finance the expansion of the American empire through its war, to finance its wars and covert overthrowing of governments that have resisted being taken over, President Nixon removed gold from our money and enforced the dollar standard with the military might behind it. That has resulted in massive money creation, but not an asset-backed monetary system, but rather a debt-backed money, which has led the world to a more and more precarious global financial position, evidenced by the 2008-2009 financial crisis that nearly bombed the world, financially speaking, back to the Stone Age. With that event, the Chinese, Russians, and other nations have chosen to find ways escaping use of the dollar and the dollar system. The Chinese are very much on their way to building an empire of their own. not by military force, but by mercantilistic economic system that has increased the global wealth while the U.S. is in the process of squandering its wealth by massive indebtedness and chronic trade deficits. Now, this is leading to currency wars, which James Rickards, my guest last week, talked about, and how that is now leading us towards the demise of the dollar and a movement towards a new global monetary system that will be backed once again by assets, not by liabilities or debt, as the current system is. James Rickards actually talked last week about how there is evidence the Chinese are clandestinely moving towards a gold-backed standard in the form of a stronger correlation of the SDR and the yuan, while the correlation of the dollar and gold are breaking down. Now, we are seeing evidence of this breakdown now of gold and silver with the dollar in Rickards' latest book titled Aftermath, in which I really highly recommend you read. He gives his well-reasoned argument for why gold will be headed in the next few years to $10,000 or more. Yes, I know that sounds ridiculous to most of you, but if you read his book and read the logic behind it, I think it will make some sense to you. He suggests that investors should allocate 10% of their investable portfolios. Those are portfolios without, that is, excluding your home equity and the assets you need to earn a living. Exclude them from your portfolio, and then take 10% of that, put it in gold bullion, 30% in cash, and 60% in stocks, of which a large portion would be the gold miners and gold and silver miners. With the breakout in gold and silver, as well as the discoveries being made by many of the companies that I'm following in my newsletter, and which I personally own, I have never been more excited about the prospects of profiting from gold exploration and mining companies than I am now. Let me give you a couple of examples, or a few examples from my newsletter that I'm currently following that I think are extremely exciting. Novo Resources, who we've talked about frequently on this show, and by the way, Quinton Henning, the president of that company, will be with me next week. They are on to what is looking increasingly likely a massive gold system that measures in hundreds of kilometers in various directions. Now, whether this can be mined economically is what is being determined now, and Quinton Henning will be with us next week to help us understand what the risks and rewards are for that. If it's answered affirmatively, then I think we've got a huge winner on our hands in Novo Resources. Another company that he is very much involved with is Irving Resources. Now, this is one in which there are some really big money people behind it. In fact, it's one that I think has the chances of becoming one of my biggest winners next year. They are in Japan, and their targets are extremely high-grade gold, a very unique story, and at some point in time, I expect to get Quinton Henning, and maybe we can ask him something about that next week when he's on our show. One of the most exciting, if not the most exciting, and my biggest personal holding is Great Bear Resources. Now, if you've heard of Goldcorp, which was recently taken over by Newmont Mining, then you must know about Great Bear Resources, because increasingly it looks like it may have made a company making discovery akin to the Great Red Lake gold deposit that was the making of Goldcorp. This is an extremely exciting story. In fact, it's one that, it's one of those stories, one of those rare stories, where whenever they put out a press release, you expect the resources to be good. It's not normal, but this company is doing extremely well, and the massive scale is what is so exciting about this. And not only that, but the fact that they have hit on such a high percentage of their drill intercepts, very unusual, and I think perhaps one of the most remarkable stories that I've ever covered in my newsletter over the past nearly 30 years. Klondike Gold Corp. Peter, we've had the CEO of that company with us just last week, the other week, and Peter will be with us again sometime in the near future. But Klondike Gold Corp is in the Klondike, the Great Klondike, where the placer mining rush, which occurred right after the California rush of 1849. Millions of ounces of gold, of placer gold, have been mined there. But Peter Talman and his crew believe that they have now found the mother lode source of all that gold, and there's a great deal more there. Not only that, but it looks like Peter has figured out that they have found the the secrets in terms of the structural characteristics where gold is hidden in the mother lode. So this is a very exciting story, and they will be coming out with drill results in the not too distant future that I think could set this stock on fire. Gold Source Mines is in Guyana. It's a company that I also own and own a large number of shares for me, a big percentage commitment for my portfolio. It is run by the same people that are ahead of Silvercrest Mines and Silvercrest Metals, I should say, and Silvercrest Mines previously, which was sold out to another company. A very successful operator, and they just recently had a high-grade discovery that suggests this could be another major winner, very low-price stock. Premier Gold Mines is a company that is producing gold from Mexico, but and the prospects of increasing production very good. But what is really exciting is their joint venture partnerships with Barrick Gold and a couple of projects in Nevada that have huge upside potential. And Brixton Resources, just a real newcomer to my newsletter, but one I think is extremely exciting and one you should keep your eyes on. He recently had a 550-meter drill intercept that graded nearly 2 grams of gold per ton equivalent. This is indicative of a huge mineralized system, and it's a very low penny stock that I think has a chance of becoming a really, really big winner. I recently purchased shares of Brixton Resources as well. Now, I don't do this very often, but what I'm doing this week is offering you a free copy of my newsletter, my monthly newsletter, the July issue, which was issued about a week ago, as well as my July 12th weekly newsletter. I offer this free of charge just so you can see what I'm doing, so you get a good idea of the kind of excitement that there is in the exploration sector and why I am so excited about the prospects for this sector and why I think, as James Rickards suggests, gold shares should be a big part of your portfolio along with gold bullion. As the world is changing very dramatically, as China and Russia and others are seeking ways to protect themselves against a dollar system that is getting increasingly long in the tooth and likely not to last too many more years, at least as its present dominant state. At least that's my view and the view of James Rickards and many other people that we have on this show. So to protect ourselves, at least financially, that's one of the things we try to do on this show in our quest to turn hard times into good times.